online as well. Right, please be reminded that we have deferred item 8.2, the Māori Outcomes Fund Guidelines. We're just going to do a bit more consultation. So it may come next meeting, it may not, but we'll ensure there's enough time for that process. But we will move now to moving forward on the Māori Outcomes funding. And just before they start, I'll just put on the screen, or do you want to, sorry, I'll just show, there's a slight addition. Councillor Winiata is happy to move and I'm happy to second. Sorry, team, I did that to you. There's just a bit of an addition to C in discussion with Member Wilson, and also I support that. It's just down the bottom. Oh, is it there? It's not showing up, but I can read it out. For some reason it's not. Yeah.
If we continue with that.
Yeah, we'll just continue with the, they're going to a presentation, so I'll just read it out. I think it's come to me. Do you have it? So it doesn't change the intention. So it's a new D, request that staff communicate with all mana whenua to ensure that they are aware of any adverse impact on them individually and a targeted underspend of the budget as it relates to capacity grants. And so it's just essentially ensuring that any changes or any delegated spend is made aware to those affected. Right. Kia ora, Nick.
Kia ora, just tēnā tātou te whānau. Thank you for receiving this item today. Hey, I just want to make a few opening remarks before handing it to...
Your mic a bit closer, thank you.
Before handing it to Richard to go through the document. So you will recall last year the Planning and Policy Committee made a unanimous decision regarding a review of the Māori Outcomes Fund. The ultimate aim of that particular review was to ensure better political oversight over the fund and also open up to a more expansive expression of interest process so that more funding was available externally from council directorates. So in previous decisions, previous eras of the Māori Outcomes Fund, work was being carried out by directorates, and we were also making the decisions over it. So the idea was to make that more open. So that decision was passed in 2025. We still have a work program that includes a number of investment areas that the Māori Outcomes Fund pays for. That includes the Marae Infrastructure Fund, and the Cultural Initiatives Fund, which we're talking to you about today. That Cultural Initiatives Fund was our opportunity to test what an expressions of interest looks like, to cater for the needs rather than looking at things like fixed assets, which the Cultural Assets Fund was focused on in previous years. So to be more fulsome of the requirements of those communities. Those marae communities. So we have tested that and we've come back with a decision, requesting a decision to fund those today. We've also outlined some of the work program to date, and so yeah, I'll hand it over to Richard now, who can talk through the detail. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. So I'll try not to kind of repeat some of what Nick said, but yeah, just to confirm, so we're coming to you with that information about the current year's fund and next year, so hence 25, 26 and 26, 27. This is the first time that we've brought the whole of the fund to the committee, as Nick referenced the Policy and Planning Committee resolution of last year. So for those of you who are here last term, you would have seen the Cultural Initiatives Fund, approximately 1.2 million of the whole Māori Outcomes Fund versus the entirety of the approximately 17 million annually. So this is our opportunity to discuss with you, show you where the funding is going. That funding is detailed in Appendix A of your report. You will notice in that appendix that there are some initiatives that have a zero against them for next year, and that's just indicative of the funding kind of running out, the agreed funding running out. The the Culture Initiatives Fund, as Nick referenced, this was our opportunity to test a new way of working. So a two-step process of an expression of interest process, followed by a full application with Marae, looking to essentially deliver on things that have come through He Whanau Makaurau, so the issues of significance that Haukura provides us with, and that have been embedded into Tamaki Ora, which is our Māori Outcomes strategy and performance framework. You may notice in the resolutions, sorry, I haven't got my clicker, but in the resolutions, it's an up to total funding of 2.1 million. That is intentional because we are still working with TPK, among others, to look for additional funding. So this is in response, I guess, to the LTP, current LTP, that the Māori Outcomes Fund would be increased to 171 million, subject to looking at how we work in partnership and co-funding and that sort of thing. So this is the first kind of effort at that. So that kind of total funding may come down, subject to a few discussions. It's not a great deal, potentially, but it is hopefully coming down. The Culture Initiatives Fund was expanded to a number of categories. So traditionally it's been sort of around non-fixed assets and things like that. What we've been keen to do is to really start to see Marae being able to be more sustainable and to be able to essentially activate. So activations might include wānanga, te reo, some rangatahi projects and things of that type. In terms of sustainability, we've had about 6 applications that look at governance and management. So governance and management, getting that right, is an opportunity for Marae to become more sustainable. So we've had some uptake in that. Digital infrastructure is another area which is about trying to make sure that Marae have the right sort of technology connections. This is not sort of laptops and devices. This is about digital infrastructure on Marae to enable them to perhaps reach out to whānau who are not able to get to the Marae or something of that type. Energy infrastructure is another category that we have in the guidelines. Again, that's responding to He Whanau Makaurau, and we've been able to sort of see how that might be able to support Auckland emergency management activations and support general resilience. Sorry, I don't have the clicker, so I can't move through the... Anyway, what I was just going to say around this slide, so I've talked about the recommendations for Marae. There is also some papakainga and housing grants. Again, this is something that we've rolled out previously and is very targeted at trying to increase housing options. I've also pointed out in the report, I think, just about some of the delays that we've experienced. So typically at this time of the year, we are going full bore to try and deliver what we've got in our work programme, Appendix A, but we will have some projects that are delayed for some good reason, and then we do have a little bit of underspend to tackle as well. On the next slide, essentially a little bit of a rinse and repeat in terms of the Māori Outcomes Fund, again, Appendix A. Just wanted to highlight that this is really a transitional year. So previously, through the internal governance and through the way in which the fund was structured, i.e. Departments applying for funding, albeit on behalf of Māori communities, this is the first time where you will see that reduce, and we will start to see the applications directly from mana whenua and Mātai Waka around the three priorities of iwi ora, marae ora and te hapori ora, all obviously subject to the aforementioned guidelines. So just some of the images there, just to try and give you a bit of a flavour and away from words. So Amotai, we are continuing to fund for the final year from the Māori Outcomes Fund next year. That is the supplier diversity. That's pulling in, enabling Māori businesses to thrive. We've got things like Te Puna, which is that immersive game development in there. That's in partnership with Te Kaora Maki. So this is trying to get young people, among other things, get young people into the creative sector. And then one of the delayed projects, slightly delayed, is the Pukekohe Cemetery that was put to us by the Franklin Local Board a couple of years ago and has been making its way through some very intense consultation and engagement with families, but ultimately is hopefully coming to a good point. You know, it's just been out to public consultation on the proposed design. So some really good projects that are delivering. But as I say, this is the transitional year whereby internal applications are now coming to an end, and we will hopefully start to see some direct addressing of iwi priorities. I'm happy to take any questions.
Kia ora, thank you, Richard. You have a question from Councillor Turner, I think.
Thank you. Just a bit of the item before this, 8.2, which was Maori Outcomes Funding Guidelines. How are we? Have we not got the cart in front of the horse here? Are those guidelines having an effect on the stuff we're talking about here?
If I may answer that, Councillor. So the guidelines have been deferred, so we won't be making any decisions on that today. But this is all part of our program. Richard spoke about our investment plan that was approved previously, and that's what we've been working to. So the Cultural Initiatives Fund is all a part of that. And also the decision that was made in 2025 talked about those priority areas that we would invest in, and that we'd be looking at these more of an expressions of interest process. So we don't need those guidelines for the decision today.
Yeah, I just saw in the previous item that the council directorates and departments could apply, but that to Maori funding, but that's not this thing we're talking about now.
That's correct. All of this is external funding through an expressions of interest process.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Filipaina.
Tēnā koe he mana. Thank you, Chair. Tēnā ko rua, tēnā koe te rangatire e Nick, ngā mihi ki a koe, ngā mihi ki a kōrua. First partai is on attachment B. There are mentions of recommended to be declined. And look, the partai for that particular one is, does your staff, Nick, does your staff end up helping or assisting with those marae? 3 of them, as you can see, did not meet funding criteria. I asked this question of all our kaimahi when grants are not approved. So does your staff sort of help them around, hey, this is what you need to upskill or uplift? Richard, Nick?
Kia ora, Councillor. Yes, so we will provide detailed feedback and look at where those applications fell short. They were predominantly under the Māori housing sort of element as opposed to marae activations or papakainga on marae, but we will go back to applicants.
Kia ora. And just last part is, I think you mentioned Te Kaurawa Maki. Yeah, and the reason I sort of, when I heard it, I sort of, what is the process for Te Kaurawa Maki, who the councillors at West know, that they have been sort of trying to at least get some putia or their marae in particular. So what happens with that process to give some surety, I think, to the local board, to the West councillors around that there is a process around assisting Te Kaurawa Maki with their marae project. Kia ora.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Filipina. So since that time that was last raised at this committee, we've been working really closely with Te Kaurawa Maki alongside a number of other funders as well, so Foundation North, the Department of Internal Affairs, to have a look at that whole of package that they are seeking. So ultimately, yeah, they do fall in a bit of a quandary in the sense that our marae infrastructure program ultimately funds existing maraes, whereas that iwi is in a situation where they don't have a marae. It was their traditional marae was in an area of the Waitakiris that was eventually flooded for the reservoirs and the dams. So particularly a poignant sort of point that has been made to this committee in the past. So it is sort of envisaged that we would take expressions of interest from Te Kaurawa Maki. We would provide that to this board for a decision, and then you would ultimately make that decision based on the merits of any application that was put forward.
Kia ora, Councillor. Are there any other questions? Oh, Councillor Winiata, sorry. Oh, next. I'll go to Councillor.
Looking at Kawa Marae and some of the infrastructure challenges that they look at, would you expect that the roading challenges, access, is something that they would come to as a grant, or is that a different conversation to have?
So yes, we're perfectly aware of the submission made by Ngāti Rehua with regards to the standards of roads, in particular going towards the marae, Kawa Marae. That roading is essentially under the, we believe that that's an Auckland transport issue. The purpose of the Māori Outcomes Fund is not to, I guess, fund what should actually be coming out of their existing road plans. What we will do, though, is work with Auckland Transport to dig a little bit deeper into why that road is in the state it is, because obviously with Kawa Marae being set up as an Auckland Emergency Management Centre, one of the criteria is that people will be able to get to that place so that they can seek shelter.
Oh, thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor. Thank you. And Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, thank you, and thank you for the work that you do. Look, I've just got a couple of question of clarification. So you had 1.9 underspend, right? I get 1.1 of them because you want to carry that over to complete in-flight projects. I get that. But why aren't you offering the remaining million or 981 back as savings?
Thank you for your question, Deputy Mayor. So ultimately, the Māori Outcomes Fund is really there to support our communities. We do envisage that we will get that money out to the right places. And just to Richard's point, it's really around, I guess, the nature of these funds and making sure that we're not just creating a false barrier there in the sense of a financial year. So the idea is that we would continue to push to have the whole of the Māori Outcomes Fund allocated, and we'd be working across these years to be able to do that.
Thanks. Supplementary, I think it's to Megan. Look, I'm all for having the budget, and if, you know, the budget is the budget, but if you haven't spent it and you haven't identified what it's being spent on, why would it not go back to savings like any other directorate? Why are you just rolling this over? Why have you authorised this? It happens in every other
Thanks. I knew it was to me. I was just going to ask Nick to maybe firstly respond. just with some context.
Well, he did, but that's look. You spend it on the things that people ask it for, and I understand that you want to spend the budget, right? But in other areas, what I'm saying is, when the budget hasn't been allocated or identified as being allocated, we offer that often back to savings, right? And I don't understand why this is rolling over. There must be a reason. I just don't know what the reason is.
So the rolling over of the budgets has existed for the entire time that I've been here for the Māori Outcomes Fund. Maybe that's a particularly nice privilege for us to have. What I want to stress, however, is just the nature of the communities and the projects that we're supporting, the amount of engagement that we try to undertake to make sure that these are happening, and just, I guess, the importance of getting this money out to those particular communities to make sure that they are supported. So, to your point, I accept that we've been given that privilege, but we have been working very hard over the last few years to increase our spend. So we've gone from spending about 65% of that to 91%. This year is particularly different, but we've of course been making sure that we've got the funds available so that this committee can make decisions and be a little bit more fulsome in where it points and directs that money.
Could I?
It's also part of the issue that we've increased the budget through the LTP, and it's a bit of a lag catch up, isn't it?
I could answer that maybe. So, so the increase would come in year 4, so next 2027-28 financial year. But maybe Deputy Mayor, just to add to Nick's point. So what we would normally do through the year, sort of earlier in the year, maybe sort of February, March, is I'd start to identify other projects where we could divert the funding to for outcomes, because we've been cognizant of the sort of new process or adapting to a new process. We haven't sought those opportunities to fund other initiatives so that we can make room for the iwi ora, marae ora, and that external application process.
Thank you. Kia ora, Member Wilson.
Kia ora, thank you for the paper. Look, just in, I guess my partai is in the sense of what work has been done at an initial stage, given the budget is the budget, in terms of unspent funding.
So what work has been done in terms of?
And understanding the nature of underspent, yeah. So what work has been done and the nature of underspent?
As Richard has said, we have worked over the years to build a pipeline of projects and programs, and we can and will shift some of this funding to those, especially those ones that are in flight. There are a couple of capacity grants there that are outstanding that we're working with mana whenua on. Those are the types of things that we think would carry over into the next financial year. And then there is an opportunity to think about how we might support some of the unsuccessful applicants out of this process, as well as looking at how we might bolster some of the areas where we've had to reduce funding because of the funding cap.
Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Philippine.
Tēnā koe he mana. Nick, Richard, look, I know in the report that option 1 is the recommended option. Now, can you give me some examples how you put in here, including responding quickly to co-investment opportunities? That was under 23. Just give us some examples of that. That's why it's important to have option 1 as your preferred option.
So the co-investment opportunities really lie with the relationship that we have with central government funds such as the DIA fund, what they're able to fund, as well as through TPK and their program of work that they are doing. So we have been working really closely with them to identify opportunities where there might be duplication of funding, and then utilising, I guess, the best of their dollars as well as ours, so that we can be really fulsome in our response to look at the full totality of what groups are looking to fund. And that also extends to other philanthropic endeavours as well.
And just one more part. Look, I know, and I'm going to use the example of Ngāti Otara Marae, with funding that they received initially. And then what happens is that when we get into some of the regulatory processes, the money they had couldn't be spent in the year it was allocated because of that. Therefore, then we had to push it through to the other years to make sure that the regulatory process happens. Is that case around the regulatory process quite common with our marae, the fund and the infrastructure?
So, I mean, with all funding, and I think that point was made in the previous item, there is a level of I'll try and be as fast as I can.
That was an accident.
There's a level of bureaucracy that goes along with funding applications. So I just wanted to stress on a few things. We work across all of the funders to make sure that there's consistency of applications, so they don't have to apply for 2 or 3 different funds. We also have support staff, so a full-time FTE that works with marae in particular, as well as other staff to support iwi. So we do our darndest to make sure to take that burden away from people, both in applications but also in reporting.
Yeah, I might actually save that for whakaaro around why I asked that pātai. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor. Member Wilson?
Just a matter for clarification. So as we deal with this item here, that hasn't got the framework that's provided by guidelines, that means it's a finite number of applications, i.e. no new ones. You're dealing with those that are looking. So it's under the same process, I guess, knowing that there's no the guidelines paper has not yet been discussed. Is that right?
So the expressions of interest process for the Cultural Initiatives Fund is closed, and those are the applications that we have, and we will look at those in the first instance. There is a pipeline of other projects and other things that we've been approached for that we can consider. An example might be the Te Kawerau Maki Marae and things like that.
Just to clarify, so what you're saying is that what's in the pipeline currently are only those items that will be considered pre the guidelines item that hasn't yet been discussed. Is that what you mean? Or are you saying under this ongoing process that you'll still be able to consider new applications?
Kia ora. So, so we could, as things stand, we could open another round of cultural initiatives funding under the current, because we're essentially operating under current guidelines, but the new guidelines would take us a lot further, a lot broader in terms of outcomes.
So I might just add to that. So as I was sort of saying before, we have an investment plan that has previously been approved. We're still operating under that investment plan. So inside that investment plan, for example, under capacity grants, we still have the ability to work with those that we currently work with to push more money towards them if you approve that delegation for the underspend.
Thank you, Member Wilson. I don't have any more questions, so I'll let the team step back. And I'll go to Matt as mover. Do you want to speak to it? Or you don't have to, but if you want.
I guess there's a bit of a contrast to how we've seen certainly grants delivered across other committees. In some ways, we're relying on the officers to provide us the best advice possible, and from a local level. I remember with our grants, the local board just happened to be the closest at the time to a lot of those groups that were coming through, and were able to kind of sift through that. By comparison to the previous previous item, I think that because of the work that Ngā Matarai does, there isn't anyone better to look into to provide information in and around the grant. So in terms of the feedback, boots on the ground, and understanding exactly what's capable and how we're actually supporting mana whenua through this process, I'm very supportive of the work that's been done. There may be ways that we can allow a more robust process, but in terms of supporting the work that we have here and what's been done, I'm hugely supportive of that. So Nick and Richard, appreciate everything that the team is doing, and the time that goes into trying to work through exactly what the needs are across the iwi that we have in Tamaki Makaurau. So thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Winiata, thank you. We have Councillor Philippine.
Kia ora, mana. Look, firstly, I don't know who's moved or second.
Councillor Winiata, I seconded, but I'm happy for
No,
you to second if you want.
no, that's all good. I'll go with the flow. Look, the reason I'm speaking is going to be very short, but, and the issue for me, well, it's not an issue. I think it's the underspend. And the Deputy Mayor raised a very good point around the underspend, but I know that in the report, in ITA under number 3, why the carry forward was supported, and that's around in-flight projects. But I also know that there have been a few marae projects that I've been involved with through the council over the years that ended up being stalled, for want of a better term, because of the regulatory process, whether it be Auckland Transport having to you need to do this, traffic management, and the money had to be pushed into the upcoming years to ensure that there was funding to complete the project. So I talk what the Deputy Mayor is saying around that, because it is important. But I think it needs to be done on a case-by-case basis, because, as I said, there's been several projects and others that had to wait because of regulatory requirements to push that budget ahead, so they had the funding there to complete the project. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Councillor Gillen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, I have the same concerns about the underspend. However, so I have the same concerns about the underspend, and I just put forward the example, the local boards don't get to roll over their underspends, and as been mentioned, other parts of the council don't get to roll that over. But I'm going to be abstaining from this item for the same reason I do so at the community committee where we've been dealing with grants, and the same reasons I gave just in the last item as well, and that is that when we're making considerations with ratepayers' money like this, we should have the applications in front of us, and we should also be having the opportunity to workshop the applications to provide an opportunity to request further information. We shouldn't just be rubber stamping the recommendations of staff on these matters. So I'll be abstaining from this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kia ora, Councillor, thank you. Are there any other speakers? Right, all those in favour? Aye. Anyone opposed? Deputy Mayor would be is against C and would like it noted, and Councillor Gillen would like to abstain on the item. And Councillor Turner would like to abstain. Thank you. To item 8.4, we have Kelly and Matthew on the Auckland Film Protocol